I'm J.R. Church. Welcome to today's Prophecy in the News.
I'm Gary Stearman. With us today, the author of this book, The Exodus Case, the third extended edition. Leonard Muller is going to join us in just a moment. You'll be amazed.
What I like about this book is the fact that it is full color. I mean, enamel-coated paper, 448 pages. It's filled with photographs of Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, with pictures under the Dead Sea of the chariot wheels, of the bones, even a femur bone from what I suppose is an Egyptian charioteer. And all of that's inside this book, and its author, Dr. Leonard Muller, is with us today from Stockholm, Sweden. We're glad to have you. We appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
I want to ask you about the DNA. You're an expert in DNA. Tell us about the Jews and how they can be linked to find all the lost tribes.
The thing is that we have DNA technology today, and we call that forensic medicine. That's one part of it. And we see all the TV shows, you know, when they're using DNA for everything, and it's a kind of a hot issue. But that can be applied for many different occasions, and we have all the normal criminal investigations where we can use blood or whatever and trace people and where they have been and so on. But it's also used to understand where people are coming from, and there are a lot of investigations ongoing right now where they look at how people have wandered up from different directions and going from one continent to the other, and they are basing it on DNA. So if the Jewish people living in different parts of the world, and they say that they've been separated for 2,000 years, 2,600 years or so, they look very different, and they claim that they have a common origin. If that is the case, we can apply science. And one way to do it is to compare the DNA of these people. And I haven't done these studies. I'm just quoting what's found in the literature in very good journals. And the answer is yes, these Jewish populations around the earth have a common origin. That's interesting in itself.
Yes, it is.
And so that means that their understanding of their own history actually can be verified by DNA. But then further on, there is a subgroup of the Jewish people that we call the Kohanim, the priesthood. And they claim that they had a very clean line, so to speak, of heritage through the generations without any introduction of foreign genes, if I should use that expression. And if they claim that that is the case, you can check that also. And that has been done. And they have collected blood from these people, from the priest families, and they can see that the priest families are separated from the other Jews genetically. But even further on, they can actually say that the priest families have a common forefather that lived circa 106 generations back in time, which is really astounding, because then you are very close to the time of Aaron.
Yes.
And I actually asked an Orthodox rabbi about number of generations from himself back to Aaron, and he could not answer, but he just called another rabbi that had the family tree all the way back, and he immediately said, it's 106 generation for me. Sorry, he said it was 103 generation for me. So what I'm trying to say here is it's an astounding fitness between the oral tradition of the Hebrews and their own family trees and so on, their pedigree, and what the DNA technique says today. So one can ask the question, is the DNA technology negative to the biblical history? No. Is it neutral? No. Does it actually support what is written in the Bible? Yes.
How about that?
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Now, J.R., we should tell our viewers that this is a renowned genetic researcher. He works at the Karolinska Institute, Stockholm, Sweden. His field of study is DNA and the effect of various substances on human DNA. So he's very well qualified to speak on this subject. Now, in your book, and this is, by the way, Dr. Leonard Muller. Leonard, in your book, a most amazing detective story where you've tracked Moses, you've tracked the Exodus, and you've opened up the territory of the wilderness march and so forth. And you also deal with the question of authorship of the books of Moses. There's some dispute today. Did Moses actually write the books? What proof do we have that these are authentic, legitimate history? And you've gone into that subject. Tell us a little about that.
I think that, as you say, it's a kind of a detective story, and it's very similar to what I do in the lab when we have to understand certain things. And it's often the case in the lab when we deal with very complicated matter, that is the simple solutions that is really, that's what helps. Sometimes our mistakes actually are the answer to a very complicated problem. So when I look into the first books in the Bible, if we call them the books of Moses, if you want to have that expression, I just have a very simple way to approach it, and that is either Moses wrote it, which is said in the text, which is said in the New Testament. It's said by Jesus stating that Moses was writing these books. So we have a number of things that indicate that Moses was the author. And I believe that it's a very simple way. Either he wrote it, or it was something totally different, even maybe a fake story. But either he did it or he did not. And a way to look at it, I went through a number of chapters in the book of Exodus, and I look at the subjects that were brought up. And I divided into things that only could have been known by Moses, only by his family, or generally for the population that lived there, the Hebrews at that time. And it is as much as about 50% of the text in these chapters that only could have been known by Moses. He's telling about his own feelings and reactions. He's telling about his encounters with God and a lot of different things. And it's only Moses that is there. There's no one else there. And then the conclusion for me then is that it must have been one or the other way. Either Moses is the author, and then he has written the whole thing, or it's just a fake story. I can buy both alternatives. I mean, one can have two different standpoints here. Personally, I believe that Moses was the author, just based on that matter. And for me, that is very simple. And for me, it's kind of a forensic approach to the whole issue. And some people argue to say that there are different words used here and there, and therefore there should be different authors and things like that. But I mean, I can in a day speak to children with a children's language. I can speak to scientists with a scientific language. I can read a book of poetry and speak poetry, so to speak. And I can read a manual for my computer in the very same day. And all these languages I'm using, it doesn't mean that I am different people. I'm just using different languages and different words. For me, it's very simple. So I just believe Moses is the author.
Very good.
Now, we've discussed a number of things about Sinai and the Jews and DNA and so on. I want to show you from this page. This is page 198 of the book. This is a view of the Nueva Peninsula, and you can see the white sands. Notice, please, the river that comes out and fills up this area as the rains have washed the sands down into making this Nueva Peninsula. This is several miles south of Eilat. I've been there myself. I stood on the shore here at this beautiful place with this a beach type place, but it never occurred to me that this was the crossing site. And yet you went there and went offshore and took diving equipment, went down to the bottom of this Yam Suf, or the Gulf of Aqaba, and found these chariot wheels and what have you. Tell us how you felt when you saw those things.
A first comment I would say is that through this Wadi Watir, when it's been raining here, it's been washed out. So therefore, in these very deep waters, there has been a kind of a, from both sides, the Saudi side today and the Egyptian side, there has been a kind of connection between these two sides, where it's very, very deep, 6,000 feet deep waters. So it has formed a kind of, if I should call it, underwater bridge. I don't have any better name for it. And the interesting thing is that if you remove the water there, you are on dry land. Because it's gravel, the water just disappears. So you could take a bicycle and go across there. And we know that the horses and the chariots of the Egyptian army went across something where they just could run straight out into the seabed.
Yes.
So it must be very special circumstances.
It was not mud. in
No,
other
absolutely
words.
no mud. And these are fulfilled here. Some people ask about the sedimentation rate. And there are very strong tidal currents going back and forth over this bridge. So that ends up in the more deeper basins, north and south of this kind of bridge, or whatever we should call it. So then, of course, when we have realized that this is the case, that we have this underwater formation, and we can actually see it on land. If anyone is there, you can see how flat this peninsula is, and how flat it goes out, and you can see the waves are breaking far out here. So you can actually visually see it. And you have the same phenomena from the other side, from the Saudi side. And then, of course, you ask the question, if this is the crossing site, wouldn't we find any traces? And in the Gulf of Aqaba, we have beautiful corals, especially in the south, in Sharm el-Sheikh and these places. But here, when we have, still today, a washout of particles and sand from these wadis, it kills the corals. So the coral you find has just grown for a short period of time and kind of frozen the shape of what it has grown on. So we have been diving, and what I can say is that we see remains of humans. We see remains of oxen or bulls or cows, if you like. We see remains of horses. We see remains of what we believe are chariots. And some of these are very regular in shape and form, and we can see spokes actually and a hub. We can see likely bodies of chariots. We can see, in one case, a rib cage of a human with the backbone and hip bones. We can see a perfect skull of a horse. And sometimes all these things are just twisted into one another in big piles. We see this on both sides, both the Saudi side and the Egyptian side of this.
All the way across.
All the way across. We haven't been in the midsection because it's a very politically hot water, where Saudi claims to have half, Egypt the other half, and Israel can be in the middle on international waters going up to Eilat. No one knows where the borders are. It's very sensitive waters. So what we can say is that, more from a forensic approach, if we should call it so, it has been a disaster there, thousands of years back in time, with animals like horses and oxen, humans, and chariots. What that represents, that's another thing. One could claim that there are some ships that has gone down there and sunken, and these are remains of that. But seen in the perspective of this court case, it is a very important piece of a puzzle. But alone, one can always argue and say, well, you can think about horses drowning there and chariots and so on. But in connection with what happened before, what happened after, and how you can put it all together, it's a strong piece of evidence.
Yeah, we have the story in the Bible.
Yes.
And there's no other evidence for it being anything else. There is no other place, even over in the Gulf of Suez, where such a thing could happen.
No way. I mean,
This is the perfect spot, isn't it?
Yeah. And the thing is that the story before this Nuweiba Peninsula, that is very important. So it's not just that they happen to be there. There is a long story in Egypt and different sites and directions, etc., etc. Many criteria that has to be fulfilled. So it's not just coincidence that we happen to be at Nuweiba.
Yeah.
We come there for a reason, and then we started to dive, and then we saw these finds on the seabed.
How about that? Amazing.
Dr. Muller has assembled all of these detective story facts in the Exodus case. We have the third extended edition, 400 pages, and it's fabulous. JR, as he develops this story, and this is amazing to me, you've got the route of the Exodus, you've got the location of the mountain of God, Mount Horeb, you have some of the locations of the wilderness march. All of these lie in contested territory today, and some of the territory of the Saudi Arabians, some where you hardly dare set your foot because there's a little bit of a dispute about things. And it occurred to me as I talked to you before this program today that maybe the Saudis feel they have a secret to keep. Maybe they know about these things, and I asked you about that, and your answer kind of surprised me.
Yeah, They know very well what this is about. There's no doubt about it. And there are many finds in today's Saudi Arabia that at that time was just the Arabian Peninsula. Saudi Arabia is a very young nation. It was formed 1932. I mean, it's one of the youngest nations we have on earth.
Yes.
So they know, and the reason I know that they know is that all these locations that has an origin with the Hebrews and the Israelites are fenced, and in many cases with barbed wire. There are signs, you're not allowed to go there, and you can go to Saudi, you can investigate anytime you like. But if you want to be within this time frame we talk about, nothing. You're not allowed to do it. You're not allowed to investigate it. You're not allowed to excavate it. You're not allowed to be there. You're not allowed to look at it. You're not allowed even to stop your car close to these sites.
But that brings up a question, and I put this question to him, by the way. I'll do it again. If you're not allowed in there, how did you get in there? And I think your answer is very appropriate.
I didn't do anything for it, and I was invited to come to these areas, and I didn't do anything strange at all. And either you can say that it was a coincidence that it happened, or you can say that God was behind this, but I didn't do anything for it. I didn't even apply for the visa. It was just given to me.
Do you think God is opening up information today that's been kept quiet for hundreds, thousands of years?
Well, you can look at it from two perspectives. Either you can say that God is showing up these things, or you can just say that these things are found today. Whatever standpoint we have, it's no doubt about that there's an enormous amount of evidence now comes up from Saudi Arabia, but also within the borders of Israel, with all the excavations there. And a lot of things. Basically every week something is popping up. It's fantastic what's going on.
Let me ask you a question. Are the Saudis afraid that the Jews will come and take that land away from them?
It's hard for me to really think in their way, but it is a disgusting thought for them that there should be something related to the Hebrews within their own land that would contaminate their land.
Now, back in 1400 BC, there was no big population in Arabia, was there?
No, it's interesting. If you just go
Where'd
to
they come from?
Yeah, if you go just to the common literature, it says that Saudi or the Arabian Peninsula was populated around the time of the Exodus, around 1500 BC. And then one can speculate who were the people there, where did they come from? From the biblical text we can know that it was a multitude or just a bunch of foreign people that joined the Hebrews on their route on the Arabian Peninsula. But when they are coming in to the promised land, into Canaan, there's no mentioning of these foreign peoples. So it's likely, from my point of view, that they are settled in the Arabian Peninsula, and that is the people that really became the Saudis today.
Fascinating concept, isn't it?
Yes, indeed it is. And you are a detective in every way, a scientist and a detective. But I cannot escape the feeling that the time is right for all these things to be known.
It's a very exciting time in history we are right now.
Yes, indeed.
Now, the program wouldn't be really filled out unless we talked about the rock at Rephidim. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And how it's what is it, 60 feet high or so, and split, and what's your take on it?
Well, it's a huge rock to begin with. I mean, it's like a building, and it's a cracked rock. It's a crack that goes all through the rock, and it's wide. It's about 3-4 feet wide, the crack. Only the crack is that wide. So you can easily walk in the crack. And you see great erosion marks at the foot, so to speak, of this rock, where you can see how it's flooded water out of the rock. And when you use satellite images, you can see how it's washed clean. I mean, the sand and so on is not that present around this rock as it is normal in the area. It's a very special rock. It's totally different from the environment around, and it is a part of the ridge, and the Horeb Ridge, and or Sinai Ridge, if you want to call it so. And that is what is said in the Bible, the rock of Horeb. In parentheses, Horeb as a name can be found on maps exactly in that area. Today, actually, the wadi that leads to this location is called Wadi Musa, the wadi of Moses. Still today.
Amazing.
Still today. So when you are there and when you see the Bedouins, they consider it to be a holy place. They are very both scared and careful about the place, and they are very irritated when people are coming close to this rock because they find it as a sacred place, and as I understand it, they also bury people in that area. But if that is the rock that the Bible talks about, that's the place where Moses stood in prayer over the Hebrews when they were attacked by the Amalekites. So when we are there, of course we ask the question, could we find any traces of the war? And you know these sling stones that was used in the old times, and we find a lot of them, and they're heavy. They are from 200 grams to 500 grams, up to half a pound to 1 pound in weight. And you can imagine if you make a leather strap and you turn it like this, and then you let it go like a bullet in the air, and you're hit by this in the head. I mean, it's an enormous impact on your skull.
Yes.
And we find that in that area, weapons like this, ancient weapons.
And so you have the Wadi Musa, you called it, which would be, Wadi, I guess, is Arabic for dry riverbed.
Yeah, we would say valley, basically.
The Valley of Moses.
Yes.
And it shows that water has flowed right there through the desert.
Yeah.
In great quantity.
In great quantity, yes.
Amazing.
On both sides of the mountain, on the back side, so to speak, we have Rephidim with the rock. On the front side, we have the stream from the mountain.
And you've got pictures of this in your book.
Yes.
Very good.
I just want you to see one more thing here.
Yeah.
This is a Jewish menorah, and this is located a few miles, several miles southeast of Mount Sinai,
in the land of Midian.
heartland of Saudi Arabia. It's ancient writing here, dating back to 1500 BC, and a picture of the Jewish menorah right there. Isn't that
This is
amazing?
important to just comment upon a little bit. And the menorah is a menorah, there's no doubt about that.
Yes.
The text is very ancient, and it means that it is likely around the time of the Exodus, and it is in the land of Midian. It is according to the route of the Exodus that I have explained here in the book.
448 pages. It's full color and enamel coated. It's really a nice coffee table sized book. It's filled with the case for the Exodus. It's like presenting evidence before a court and a jury, and it's there for you. I hope you'll read it. You will be fascinated by it, and it's $39.95 plus shipping and handling. I would encourage you to get the video as well on DVD. It's 3 hours. It's called The Exodus Revealed. It shows all of the underwater sites that were filmed by Dr. Moeller, the chariot wheels, the various things he's talked about on today's program. You'll love it. Got a great animation of how it takes you down the wadi, across the wadi, the Nueba Wadi, and down into the water. You can see it right here. It's $24.95 plus shipping and handling. Get both of them from us. Call the phone number at the bottom of your screen and order them today. I hope you will. Gary?
Well, JR, as we come to the end of this program today, I have a sense that what we're talking about is timely. And JR and I study prophecy. We're interested in Bible prophecy. And it appears to us that events are coming together in the latter days, and you're part of that. In other words, you've exposed something that the Lord waited until this time in history to open up again. How do you feel about that?
Exciting. It's I think we are approaching a time in history where everything is changing. We are on our way to change the monetary system, the political system. We have totally different bodies in the world today that are in charge of things. Countries are freely giving up their own authority of their own lands. Like in Europe, forming the European Union. We just gave away the authority from all these countries to something that is in Brussels today. There's a lot of things that happens that we haven't really seen in history before. And at the same time, in this generation, we had Israel re-established again. And whatever that happens on the Temple Mount, which is the hub of the world, you will read about in the newspapers. If you threw a piece of rock on that mountain, you read about it in the papers. But if you kill 2,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 people in a country in Africa, you wouldn't even have a notice in the papers. So everything that happens in the hub of the world, Jerusalem, will direct what will happen on earth in the future. Everything we read about, everything that the presidents are working with on earth, what UN is working with, whatever we're working with in terms of security and everything, whatever that's related to the airport security here in the US, has to do with the Temple Mount. It all boils down to that. So if we should look at something that has to do with the future, keep an eye on the Temple Mount. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. As the Jews prepare to return to sacrifices.
That's true.
And so we are seeing the fulfillment of biblical prophecy like never before. This year might be, who knows, a year of monumental fulfillments of biblical prophecy. And just to establish the crossing site of the Exodus should shake up Jewish theology and the people at the Hebrew University. You know, Gary, back a few years ago, you mentioned that one of the leading professors had said, well, there probably wasn't an Exodus and there probably wasn't a Joshua to lead the people across.
That's right.
And, David was probably just a chieftain of some tribal chieftain, you know. But hey, we've got the crossing site. We've got the real Mount Sinai. We've got evidence of the Jews living in Saudi Arabia for those 40 years. And it's an astounding thing, and it's going to create, I think, a revival, a spiritual revival in Israel.
And I was about to say, JR, this book, and again, it's the Exodus Case, 3rd extended edition,
448 pages.
Listen, this book will change the way you read the Bible. It changed the way I read the Bible, I must say. It changed my perception of how God works among men. It's really an amazing book, and I have to congratulate you. And at the same time, I know that you feel that you were led in the process of writing the book.
Yes. The first edition, the text of the first edition, I wrote in 2 weeks with my 2 index fingers. And
now that's a miracle.
That's not what I normally do when I write books. No.
Well, we certainly appreciate your coming to be with us on today's Prophecy in the News. It's been a delight to see you again. After all these years, you haven't changed a lot. You still look young and handsome. And
I'm a very old person.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's his working DNA.
Yeah.
Hey, if you don't know Jesus as your personal Savior, trust Him today. He'll give you eternal life, and you can live forever. Amazing. So receive Christ as your personal Savior. He is the one who died for you. He loves you. He wants to give you eternal life as a free gift. So trust Him today. Ask Him to forgive you and save you. I'm J.R. Church with Gary Stearman and our friend Dr. Leonard Moeller. Until next time, keep looking up.
Prophecy in the News is a viewer-supported ministry sponsored by our many friends across America and in your area. For your gift of $10, you can receive a special edition of our current program on audio tape, or for a gift of $20, we'll send you our programs on videotape. For either order, call the 800 number on your screen right now.